Welcome to Accreditation Made Easy, the podcast that takes the stress out of accreditation. I'm your host, Areaka, and in each episode, we'll deliver actionable tips, expert insights, and practical strategies to help streamline the process, and of course, make your work life a little easier. Now, whether you're tackling policies, preparing for assessments, or just looking for ways to stay ahead, we've got you covered. Let's simplify accreditation, one step at a time. Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Accreditation Made Easy. I am your host, Areaka. Welcome back. If you listened to me last week, I did AI voice. But this is me this week. It was really close to my voice, but it was just missing the essence of it. So from here forward, you'll be hearing me and possibly soon some guests. So stay tuned. All right. Today's topic is about using the language directly from a standard in your policies. And so what I mean by that, when you're crafting your agency's policies, you need to know when it's okay to copy the language from the standard itself and when you need to expand on it. So knowing this difference is critical. First and foremost, accrediting bodies, they expect agencies to follow their own policies, right? And those policies should comply with the letter and the spirit of the accreditation standard. Now, what is meant by that? Well, obviously, the letter of the standard is exactly what it says, word for word. Now, the spirit of the standard gets a little bit more complicated. You got to understand the background of it, read any references to the standard, and what the intent behind the words are. And when you understand both the letter and the spirit of the standard, you have a better overall understanding of what the expectations are for that standard. So it's really important. But just remember, accreditation tells you what is required, and then it's up to your agency to determine how they go about doing that. So when is it safe to use standard language? Well, when it is super clear, direct, and specific, it's generally safe to use the standard language in your policies. Let me give you a few examples. If the standard says a written directive requires each member be accountable to only one supervisor at any given time, that's pretty clear and direct. You would be safe to copy that into your policy as a policy statement to show compliance with that standard. Here's another example. A background investigation is conducted on civilian applicants hired by the agency. The investigation includes, and then it goes on to say, a warrants check, a fingerprint check, and it just lists them out. That's another example of something you could have directly in your policy because it's very clear and direct what is required. They're straightforward examples. You can safely use the standard wording, especially right after the phrase, a written directive requires that, and then whatever comes after that. Now, when would you have to expand on that language? Whenever you read the standard and you see words like describes or identifies, establishes procedures, those key words should clue you into the fact that it wants something more. You're expected to expand upon the language and explain how your agency meets the requirements. So let's talk about a couple examples. A written directive describes the agency's inventory control system. This is an example of where you must describe your actual system. Is it an electronic database? Maybe it's an asset tagging system. Here's another example. A written directive identifies the requisite skills, knowledge, and abilities. Again, you must spell out what your agency looks for in its instructors. What are those skills? What knowledge and what abilities in order to be an instructor? The last example I have is a written directive establishes procedures for levels of response to calls for service. Here, you must define your levels, whether it's code 1, 2, 3, etc., and then detail the response procedures for each. In short, if the standard hints at a description, identification, or procedure, then your policy must go beyond just copying exactly what the standard says and actually explain what your process is. Here's some important things to note. Using the exact language from the standard, it's okay, but it's not mandatory. You don't have to. Your agency may have its own terminology for things, and that's fine. You may call things details instead of off-duty employment, or secondary weapon instead of personally owned firearm. That's perfectly fine. Just clarify any equivalency needed for assessors, so when they're reading your policy and it differs from what's in the standard, they know it means the same thing. The key takeaway? Always look for whether the standard expects just compliance or it expects a description or some sort of expansion. Again, reach out to me whenever you're unsure. I'm always here to assist you with interpreting standards or your policies. Now, of course, I will provide all of this to you in a quick reference guide, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And if you're not already signed up for my Accreditation Academy Content Hub, it's free to do so, and I'll also have a link to that in the show notes. All right, that's all I have for you today. I hope to see you back next week. Until then, let's keep making accreditation easy, one step at a time.